The use of options has proliferated massively amongst retail investors, and while they've become very popular, it's apparent that very often many people aren't quite sure exactly how they work or what to do with them. I already have an introductory video for options that's up, so if that seems useful, that's available on the same playlist. And I'll be going further into more technical elements of options in future videos. But this one is designed to show strategies that are employed with options, how they're constructed, and what they do. So just to review, a put option gives the holder the right to sell a security at a set price, and a call option gives the holder the right to buy a security at a set price. What I have on the screen is put-call parity. And what this shows is that the premium on a call option plus the present value of the strike price on the underlying asset is equal to the premium on a put option plus the price that the underlying is trading at. I'm showing this because having this formula, it can be deconstructed and shown in different ways. So by rearranging the elements of the equation, we can see the relationship between calls and puts. And this is very useful just to have as a reference going forward. So the most simple strategy is just using the option itself. So a long call option gives the right to buy an underlying security. And the reason someone would buy a call option is when it's expected that the stock will rise in price. Buying a put option, on the other hand, is used if there's an expectation that the underlying stock will drop. A short call position or writing a call option is typically used to generate income. And this is typically used when the investor expects that the stock won't rise in price, at least not up to the strike price. Once the investor sells the call option, a premium is paid. So the hope is to collect this premium without having the shares called away from the investor. On the other hand, however, the investor might expect the shares to be called away, and this would be done to collect that premium if the investor has a price in mind and would sell the stock if it rose to that price, getting paid a premium to commit to sell it at that price ahead of time. Selling a put option, or writing a put, is used similarly to writing a call option, except with the inverse expectation. This is when the investor expects that the stock is not likely to fall in price, at least not to the strike price on the option. Or, similarly to selling the call option, an investor might do this if the investor wants to buy a stock and sees a price that would be acceptable to buy it at, and wants to collect a premium to commit to buy it at that price ahead of it reaching it. A covered call is selling a call option, but when the investor has the underlying shares that the option is on. This is different from just selling a call in that if the option is exercised, the investor who sold the call won't now be short 100 shares of the underlying, but will instead have their own 100 shares called away from them. In that sense, the position is covered. A cash secured put is selling a put option when the investor has sufficient cash to buy 100 shares of the underlying at the strike price. And this is generally used to generate income for the investor. A married put is generally used to hedge a position. If an investor has 100 shares of some stock, the investor might buy a put option on those shares to hedge against downside risk. For each 100 shares, a put option now has a floor that if the share price were to drop below that, the investor would be able to sell the shares, thus hedging out downside risk. And similarly, a married call hedges out a short position, where for every 100 shares short that an investor is, buying one call option will protect from upside movements in the underlying shares. A bull call spread is created by buying a call option and selling another call option out of the money at a higher strike price. This gives the investor gain on any movement up, but not past that second call option. So there is a limited spread where the investor will profit, and beyond that, it just hits a wall. And what this higher call option does is provide the funds, or some of the funds, to be able to buy that lower strike price call option. An investor would generally enter into this position when the investor expects that a stock will rise in price and is willing to give up some additional upside potential in order to receive funds to pay for the call option that's at a lower strike price. A bear put spread is similar, but this time the investor buys one put option and sells another put option at a lower strike price. And this is used when an investor expects that the shares will drop in price. Again, similarly to the call option version, here the lower strike price put option partially pays for the higher strike price put option, but as a trade-off, the potential gain is capped at that lower strike put option. A protective collar is constructed by going long 100 shares, selling one out of the money call option, and buying one out of the money put option. Now, this out of the money put option protects risk from downside movements in the share price. And selling that out of the money call option is used to pay for the put option. Now, this provides protection to the downside, but does cap potential gains to the upside in share price movement because of that short call option. A long straddle is constructed by buying a call option and a put option at the same strike price and expiration. And what this does is that if the stock is expected to move in price, to the upside, there's profit, to the downside, there's profit. But if it doesn't move, then the investor loses. So this is useful if the investor expects movement to the upside or downside, but isn't sure which direction it'll likely go in. A long strangle is a similar strategy, but in this case, one call option is bought out of the money and a put option is bought out of the money, so now they aren't at the same strike price. And this is useful for if the investor expects a very large movement in price and isn't sure which direction it will be in. It will generally cost less to enter into this position than buying a straddle, because in this one, the options are out of the money. But that also means the investor will most likely need a larger movement in either direction in order to be profitable, because most likely these options will have a lower delta, or sensitivity to changes in the price of the underlying stock. A short strangle is the inverse, where one call option is sold out of the money and one put option is sold out of the money. The investor receives income from selling these options. However, if the share price moves up or down significantly, that could potentially be a very large loss to the investor. So this is used when an investor expects that the share price will not move much at all, in either direction, neither up nor down. A long butterfly spread is built by buying one in-the-money call option, two call options are sold at the money, and one call option is bought out of the money. This is used if the investor expects that the share price will not move much at all, and is most profitable if the share price ends up being at the same strike price as those written at the money call options. A short butterfly spread is constructed by selling one in the money call option, buying two call options at the money, and selling one call option out of the money. And this is used when the stock price is expected to move significantly in either direction, and is most profitable when it gets toward either of the upper or lower call options. An iron condor is built by selling one put out of the money, and then buying one put out of the money but at a lower strike price, and then selling one call option out of the money, and buying a call option out of the money at a higher strike price. And this is generally used as an income-generating strategy when the stock is not expected to move much in either direction. Those two long options, however, do offer protection against large price movements in the underlying. An iron butterfly is constructed by selling one put at the money, buying one put out of the money, selling one at the money call option, and buying one out of the money call option. And this is used for when the stock isn't expected to move much in price. And again, we see those out of the money long options are able to protect the position from large movements up or down. Calendar spreads in general are taking a long and short position in the same derivative, but with each leg at a different expiration date. A long calendar spread would be selling a shorter term option and buying a longer term option, and this is used if volatility is expected to increase during that time in between the shorter and longer term options. And note, since they are at different times to expiration, that increase in volatility would have to be sufficient to account for the natural decay in an option's value as its time to expiration decreases. And a short calendar spread is constructed by buying one shorter term option and selling a longer term option. And this is generally used to profit from an expected decrease in volatility over the time between the two options. Well, I hope you found this useful, and do subscribe and check out other videos in the finance series. I'll be having more coming out, but until then, have a cool time.